What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, and today I'm back talking to you guys, talking about everybody's favorite game, and that is Warhammer 40k. Today I want to talk a little bit more about the actual tabletop, I guess rules etiquette, or just etiquette in general, regarding models. More specifically, proxying models. So I've been playing 40k since 5th edition. We took a little break about midway through 6th, and we got back in it towards the latter half of 7th edition. So for the most part, we played 5th, 8th, and of course 9th edition. So going through all these games and everything, I remember that proxying varied widely. Some of our friends proxied the hell out of their armies, while others were very specific that the model has to be what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG, basically. So, in my opinion, proxying models are okay. The game of Warhammer is a game that requires a lot of hours and a lot of money. So to proxy, that kind of mitigates it, because if you don't know what army you want to play, it's not a good idea to just start collecting boxes or buying models that you think are cool, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to, first of all, buy them, second of all, do the actual building, assembling, magnetizing, painting. That's all going to take time. And then get to know the army and then play it on the battlefield against somebody. And I, for one, am guilty of doing this. For a long time, I always wanted to play Eldar. So a few months ago, I bit the bullet and I bought an Eldar Apocalypse set with a bunch of Wraiths, Wraith Lords, and that's the kind of army that I wanted to play. But as I started building them, I just kind of lost interest, and now they're just like some half built, and it's just like, oh, well, that sucks. And then the other thing too is I didn't know whether I should go with the swords, the axes, or the gun weapons, the ranged weapons for my Wraith Guard. So that was another issue, and it's like, do I really want to magnetize and put the money into buying the magnets and whatnot? So all in all, it's a big, a big investment, I guess you can put into words. Just investing your time and money to get an army on the battlefield. And then the other half of it is, what if you don't like the way the army plays? Wraith Lords, Wraith Guards, they're pretty expensive, they're durable, but they're a lot of points. So that's going to soak up a bunch of positions in the army for other models and whatnot. And if you lose time and time and time again, you're going to start to not like the army, or once a new edition comes out or a new codex comes out, things change. So let's say you did glue all swords on your Wraith Guard. Let's say swords were really good back in 8th edition, and now in 9th edition maybe they're not great. So now you're stuck with models that have swords on them that aren't really good in this edition, meaning you're not going to want to play them as much, especially if your play group is very competitive. So you might want to say, well, I want to try out the axes. So, some people will be, okay, yeah, that's fine. They got swords, but whatever. It's you're going to be using axes. While if you're going into tournaments, that's not how it is. You literally have to be, what you see is what you get for the most part when you go to tournaments. So that's another thing that's kind of stopping you from playing the army that you want to, trying out new things. It's a very tricky, sticky situation. So that's one aspect of it, because you're spending all this time and money to build your army. Maybe it's okay to, play with different models. That's another thing too, because we had a buddy who, back in high school, obviously, this was like freshman year, sophomore year, we were just starting to get into like 40k a little bit more heavily, and there was a new friend, a friend at the time, who wanted to play Space Wolves. However, his type of army that he wanted to play relied on heavy amounts of wolves. He didn't want to even pay to get freaking Space Marines. So he decided to take a piece of paper and just cut it up into tiny bits and just wrote wolf on them. So here I am playing my Tau army. At the time it was fully based, fully painted, I did it all myself. And I look across the table and there's just pieces of paper, not even cut into like perfect circles like the size of the bases or anything like that. Literally just ripped scraps, pieces of paper, and he just wrote down what it was. So for I guess three things, this wasn't a good idea. For one, the base size was wrong. Two, you don't know how tall the model is. Can it hide behind this piece of terrain? Can I get line of sight to it? And then three, you're not really that immersed into the game when you're like, okay, so my wolf lord here charges your Tau, and all I see is just a white piece of paper. It's like, okay. I guess you have to go into it in one of two ways. One, knowing that, hey, this isn't a real game, like you're just trying to get somebody into the hobby, and if you're broke, you're a freaking high school student, maybe buying and investing into something like that isn't something you want to be doing currently. So I guess pieces of paper would have to do. But at the same time, it's know that this isn't going to be the state of things forever. Let's say the wolves really did spark his interest and they really did really good in this mock game. Then now they know what to buy. Start with box sets that have wolves in them and kind of build the army slowly that way, so that as you're proxying and kind of getting the feel of an army, then you can say, yeah, I like this, I want to go that route. And in a few months' time, he'll hopefully have an army actually built on the table that are actually miniatures, not just scrap pieces of paper. On the other side, another thing that we do pretty often is just proxying what weapons a model has. So actually having fire warriors, but let's say you didn't model them with pulse carbines, they have plasma rifles or whatnot. So that's something we overlook. It doesn't play that often where all our army is completely proxied or anything like that, because that's not fun. At the end of the day, it's very confusing. You're like, okay, so that's not supposed to be a rhino, that's supposed to be what again? What am I actually charging? What do they actually have? So it does get confusing from time to time, but not to the point where it's just, you're getting bogged down trying to remember things left and right. I'd say a good rule of thumb is maybe proxying 3 units at max, because it's less to remember. And 40k, there's already a ton of rules to remember, and just adding things on top of that isn't very fun for anybody, especially yourself, where you get jumbled up and you're like, oh crap, this wasn't what I was supposed to be, so now you gotta go like back in time and like re-roll things, and it just makes the game very much more convoluted. So I think 3 at most is where you kind of keep it okay, especially if with groups of friends. Obviously, if you're playing at like a game store, you're playing against somebody new, I think it's more courteous and respectful to just have the models represent what they actually are. Again, saying, oh, before the game, I'm playing, Space Marines, however, they're painted salamanders, but I'm actually doing Raven Guard. I think that's okay. I mean, you can't really change the paint scheme. So again, it's just best to let your opponent know, your play group know beforehand, before things get a little too out of control. Like I said, back when our friend was using pieces of paper, at the time we just wanted to play 40k, we didn't care what it was, but we quickly found out that, yeah, that's not gonna cut it. Another cool thing too is, I don't know if they do it for 40k, but I know in D&D, you can actually like purchase and download like images of like monsters and have them be on like a special stand where like the monster is to scale. So if you're playing like a gelatinous cube, you download a picture of a gelatinous cube, cut it out, I guess you put it on like some thicker paper so that it stands when you put it on the base. So you actually have the base with the gelatinous cube. Yeah, it's 2D, but it's better than nothing. If you don't have the models, that's a very awesome thing you can do. I guess you could do the same thing with 40k, but usually with 40k, you're playing grand armies with like 50 plus models, so I can see where something like that wouldn't be very logical to do, but it is an alternative, and it's better than just having straight pieces of paper on the board. So that's another cool thing that you can do, here and there. Like, let's say you don't want to buy a Titan, but you've got like a cardboard cutout of a Titan. I guess you could use that. going to be a little wonky if you're like trying to shoot it from the side, because you don't have the full, 3D space of it. But I guess it works. But what's your guys' opinion on this? How much proxying is okay, and at what point does it start to overstep boundaries? Let me know, and we'll keep the discussion coming. As always, this has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll be catching you guys in the next one. Peace.